All right, everybody. Hey, it's Greg Harrelson here with my co-host Abe Safa, and of course, as usual, it is Tuesday, and we are just coming all together on the Facebook page within Real Geeks to make sure that we give you as much coaching and value as we can. It's kind of interesting, that Real Geeks has made a commitment to go beyond just providing technology, also providing coaching in some formats and in various formats, because I know some other people are also helping out with Real Geeks. So I just want to kind of acknowledge Real Geeks for stepping out of the box and kind of like pioneering coaching, even though they're really more of a tech company. So that shows a commitment to the agents. Abe, I appreciate you joining me, consistently week in and week out. I don't think I could do this without you. So welcome again.
Thanks, Greg. It's always a pleasure to do these. It's fun.
Yeah, it is. And so we're going to, kind of have a little discussion about, we might end up having a little discussion about data and things like that. But for the most part, I just like the conversation about, how well does an agent really know their market? I'm fortunate you and I do that Myrtle Beach Real Estate TV. So I feel like I'm an absolute master of the market stats in our market. And I try to give you as much credit as I can, because I almost feel guilty by telling people how well I know the market. Because the reality is, if I didn't do that with you and you didn't bring those stats, I wouldn't know jack. Or I guess I would. It would just take a lot of energy for me to go find all that information. So, I think it's a testament that, some of the things that Abe and I want to talk to you about today, we want to talk to you about the importance of how important it is to know the market. So what are your thoughts on this in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's crucial in all markets, no matter what's happening in the real estate market, to know the data,
Yeah.
right? To get into an in-depth conversation with a buyer and seller when you're talking about their motivation, when they're telling you about their plans and what they want to do with their property. I think it's really important to have as much data points that you can give to them to be able to help them make a decision, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big believer. I know a lot of agents are always asking, well, how can I get someone to list their home? Or how can I get somebody to pull the trigger sooner rather than later? I'm a big believer in people that are uncertain about what they're doing or uncertain about the conditions of the market are the ones that actually hesitate to make a move. So I think
Mm-hmm.
by being able to give them information that's going to help them make a decision, I think you're doing your job. That's what your job should be. And then there's going to be times, well, look, it doesn't make sense for the person to sell. Yeah, I mean, but you have to know the data. And so then when you go into a market like we're in right now, where there's just a lot of confusion,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of like data changes daily, right? Last week, the last 3 weeks, the inventory's been going up, and then all of a sudden it goes down a little bit, right?
Yeah. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, a lot of people, if you're not paying attention to the data, you're missing these little key points that can really differentiate you from other agents in the market. So that's kind of like that's where my mind is going when we talk about, okay, how well should you know your market?
Yeah, that's good. And I agree with you. And if we just kind of pick on that one little thing that you said, that the in most real estate markets across the country, we saw a significant increase percentage wise, not number of listings, but a significant increase in inventory percentage wise a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago. And like you said, then in the last week, we saw an actual decrease in inventory. Okay. And I would assure you that, like you said, most agents wouldn't know that. But what's the significance of knowing this? And in my mind, what I was sharing with agents today is, here's some significance. And that is, if you notice, when the inventory was increasing aggressively, that's when buyers started saying, I'll just wait to see what happens. I think inventory is going to increase and prices could come down. And that's what the consumer saw, that inventory was going up. And so then they started using that logic as to why they were not doing anything. Well, do they know that last week inventory went down? And the answer is, I guarantee they don't know that the inventory went down. Well, if they knew the inventory went down, could that make a difference to anybody? Maybe or maybe not. Like, I'm not trying to convince anybody on this call that that's going to actually change the game and you're going to make a ton of sales just because that person knows something new. But I will say this: if you told 10 buyers the new stats, I bet you somebody would make a different decision. Somebody that's not wanting to look would probably say, oh, really? Well, okay, well, let's look at some property. Somebody that was at the verge of making an offer, but they said, nah, I think I'm just going to hold off. Maybe that's the one thing that would push them over to making an offer. Again, if you had 10 scenarios, one time, I bet you that bit of information will help you. 9 times, it's not going to help you. But what's the downside of attempting something and it not working, knowing that one time it's going to work? And for a lot of us, if we got one more out of 10, that would be a significant increase in our production.
There's no question. And even at times where you feel like it doesn't work, it's working. Because that person you're talking to is looking at you in a different light than he's looking at the other agents. Because all the other agents right now are calling and saying, look, the market shifted, inventory is growing.
Yes.
That's it. That's the 2 sentences they have. That's the whole depth of their conversation. As opposed to you're bringing something different, a different element, more in depth. And it's better data to give people.
It's so the word that I thought of as you're talking is you're looked at as an authority.
Mm-hmm.
When you're the one bringing the data. So another way to look at it is not only are you looked at as an authority, but or I should say, why are you looked at as an authority is because you're becoming a resource for them. So there's all kinds of resources. People can go to Google, find out information. They can go to Zillow and find out a Zestimate. Go ahead and put in your comments how everyone hates the Zestimate. No opinion on the Zestimate. But the consumer thinks that it means something. They can go to, again, Google and start like Googling things. Or you could actually be their resource. So when an agent is not their resource, then Google and Zillow are. They have to have a resource, or Fox News or CNN or the different channels that are out there. That's their resources in absence of the real estate agent being their resource. So there's where really you can create an authoritative type of relationship, be an authority in their eyes if you'll know the market and then communicate the market.
Yeah. So the one data point I want to point out, which is what kind of spurred this whole conversation, or at least the thought of this conversation, was last month in our market, the number of new listings that hit the market was down 3.8%.
Got it.
Nationally, over the past 5 or 6 weeks, new listings hitting the market has decreased over last year.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, but then when you talk to sellers out there, they say, oh, no, too many properties on the market. Stuff's not selling right now. This is not a good time. When you have that kind of data to give to them, so look and show them a chart. Like, look, the last 5 weeks in a row, new listings in the market has decreased.
Yeah.
So little things like that, knowing that little data point can make a big difference in the conversation.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. So what are some things? Okay. So what are some things? I know, like, making kind of a laundry list for people.
Yeah.
One thing would be, is what we've already talked about, what's happening with inventory levels? Is it going up or going down? That's a very important data point, because when buyers are saying, I'm just going to wait because I think there's going to be a lot of inventory. Well, what if the inventory is going down? Well, then you can say, hey, look, I can really appreciate your perspective on that. And in the event that inventory does go down, and maybe that's a possibility, but through all the issues that we've had, we saw a little decrease in an increase in inventory at the beginning when the interest rates were actually increasing. But now that kind of higher interest rates, or these current interest rates, are kind of like the new normal, we actually started seeing inventory dip down again. Like, that's very important information for that buyer that says, I'm going to wait because inventory is going up.
Yeah, especially if they heard on the news that, inventory nationally is up 60% compared to last year. Like, what does that even mean? So to them, it sounds like, oh my God, a bunch of inventory. But in reality, when you look at it, as much as it's gone up, we're still in a very, very strong seller's market. When you look at months supply of inventory in the market, when you look at the number of homes for sale in the entire country, 1.2 million homes, that's a very low number.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, our inventory has doubled when it comes to single family homes since, I think since February. but we went from a 1 month supply to a 2 month supply, right? So
Yeah.
you got to, when you have that data and you kind of could put things back into perspective for the client, it makes a difference.
What else do people need to know?
So inventory numbers for one. Know
Okay.
what your numbers are. Know how many homes there are on the market. Know how many condos. If you're in a market that has heavies in condos and lots for sale, commercial, whatever it is that you specialize in, make sure you know how many are on the market, and also out of those, what's the absorption rate? How many of those are actually under contract? Okay, so knowing that number is going to give you just the absorption number, knowing that what percentage of properties on the market are actually under contract, and you can kind of track that. I track that on a daily basis. I actually have it in a spreadsheet that I look at every single day. So I can go back for 2.5 years now. Every single day, I can see the trend that we're on. You and I have been talking about the market shifting for months before it actually started being talked about in the market, because we saw the trend with that percentage. So know your inventory number total on the market, what's pending, and whether that number is which way it's going, whether it's going up or whether it's going down, is one thing.
Yeah. Got it. And so, like I remember, some of the earlier episodes of Myrtle Beach Real Estate TV, where you were always looking at what the pending to listing ratio is for new construction.
Right.
And it became so obvious how the new construction was just absolutely on fire. And then as we started seeing that ratio favor the new construction to a high level, then that's when the prices started skyrocketing, because the developers had so much leverage. They were the only ones producing inventory, and they took advantage of that, not in a negative way, but they took that opportunity to raise their prices, create bidding wars, all for new construction. So these numbers matter.
No question about it.
Yeah. So what else? Any other ones besides those?
Yeah, so I think also on the national, I mean, you want to know your local numbers, right? So the ones we just mentioned, you also want to have some national numbers to look at, because sometimes, depending on what market you're in, sometimes you're lagging behind certain markets, sometimes you're ahead of those markets. So looking at other markets is also going to help you determine where you are or where your market's heading in the near future. You should know that. You should know mortgage rates.
Yeah.
Okay, that thing's like a roller coaster. One day it's up, one day it's down. Yeah, so but that's not what the consumer's thinking. The consumer's thinking mortgage rates are up and they keep going up. That's not the case. There's been certain weeks where there's been some opportunities where the mortgage rate dipped a little bit. You need to know that. And all these things we're talking about, it's not like you have to sit there and study for hours upon hours. Like I literally spend 5 minutes a day just looking at a couple of websites, getting those numbers in order. I'll post them right there on my desk before I start making my phone calls. So I've got some good data points to be able to have conversations with people.
Yes. And talking about like mortgage or loan apps, you can find out that, okay, applications are down by, hypothetically, they're down by 12% this week. There's plenty of data out there. Well, another one that I don't think that you mentioned is like, understanding what is the trend for showings.
Yeah.
Like, what's the trend for showings? Like, say, go to Showing Time if y'all use Showing Time in your MLS or whatever showing software y'all might have, or program that you might have. Look to see what is the trend for showings. Are showings increasing? Are they decreasing? Like we saw one time. I remember, Abe, you said, "Hey, look at the showing report," and we looked at the showing report, and the showing report was decreasing, like a 25% decrease in showings. Well, there was also a significant decrease in loan apps. There was also a significant decrease in web traffic across the various websites, real estate websites. So you see, there's a correlation. When I see that there's lower traffic on websites, then you be assured, then that means there's going to be fewer leads captured, which means there's going to be fewer people showing property or looking at property, which means there's probably going to be fewer loan applications submitted.
Yeah.
Like when I go in to talk to a seller, and the seller's saying to me, "I want to list for 550,000," when in my heart that property needs to be 524,000 or 25,000. This data right here is going to be what I'm going to use to suggest to them that, hey, it might be better. Like, let's talk about what's going on in the market. Big portals that have the majority of the real estate traffic in America are all reporting decreased traffic, which means there's fewer leads being captured by the real estate agents. Then I look to see, okay, well, how does that affecting the showings? And we realize that showings are down 25%. So for every person that was getting 4 showings, that person's now only going to get 3 showings. 25% of the showings are gone. And then we look at the mortgage applications and we can see, well, even mortgage applications are taken down. So there's less traffic, less people looking to buy. They're not, there are less people showing or looking at getting into the homes, and it's all correlated with less of them are applying for loans right now. So what does that mean for the market? If you knew all that was going on in the market, would you say the market's likely to go up or likely to go down? Anybody in their right mind would say, well, based on that, it's probably going to go down. Okay, well, maybe we need to go ahead and be more realistic on the list price. But if you're not providing those market stats, then they're using the news to be the resource. And you want to make sure that you're the resource, not the news.
Yeah. And one last data point I think you should look at is also days on the market. See how that's changing, because that got ridiculously low over the last 2 years, but now we're starting to see it inch its way back. It's nowhere near normal, but it's still it's working its way up. One other thing I want to mention, Greg, is even within your market, these numbers don't really paint a clear picture on what's happening in the entire market, right? You can't just generalize like that. There are still pockets. I know in our market, there are still pockets within a market that is super, super hot. And then there's pockets where it's just extremely cold. I'll give you an example, oceanfront condos. Okay. There's a couple of buildings right now. If I had 5 listings, I know I could sell them in 5 minutes and multiple offers. But then you've got some buildings that went all of a sudden from 3 months ago, only 1 unit on the market. Now there's 28, 29 units in the building for sale. Those 5 or 6 or 7 buildings have slowed down. So it's important to know that, because when you for example, I'll give you another example. I just sold a condo in one of our communities. It's not on the oceanfront. Put it on the market Friday, multiple offers, sold it Saturday over the weekend. I was able to call I pulled up my database, everybody that owned in that community, called them all up. And my conversation to them was, look, just listed on the market, got multiple offers. And the reason we're able to do that is even though the rest of the market, condo market out of town is really, really slowed down, inventory has increased, we've got nothing for sale in your community right now. So right now there's still a window of opportunity for you because there's no inventory there to be able to still get a great price in this market. So you're able to have those conversations if you know which pockets are still hot and which ones have cooled off.
Yes.
Yeah.
Man, it's just a matter of, I think another thing that we should say here, what matters most is not that it's not that the information is not as valuable as our interpretation of the information. So any stat that Abe or I talked about today, we can find it on the internet. So it's available for everybody, right? But there's so much information out there and there's so much conflicting information, it's almost overwhelming for the consumer. So I just want to make sure everyone understands, it's not just by knowing your market stats. That's not necessarily where the value is. It's knowing the market stats and communicating, interpreting that to the consumer. That's the winning strategy. So like, for instance, you go to a Zillow's estimate and it says it's worth $300,000. And then you go to realtor.com's, whatever their valuation tool is, and it's $272,000. And then you go to Redfin and it's $399,000. It's like, okay, great. There's all this information where you can go out there and get an estimated value of your property online. But when you go and you search multiple websites, you're more confused than if you never would have actually searched on any websites. How do you choose? Which one is it? Is it the 390, the 300? Is it the 275? Who knows? So information confuse the consumer. This is a window of opportunity for the real estate agent to now go and give them interpretation of that information, which is nothing more than, hey, look, it's a great start to look on the internet, The difference in multiple websites and the valuation is because the way that they calculate is different. They have different algorithms. One of them is looking at all properties in this one, like 1 mile vicinity, but because there's a mobile home park within that 1 mile, it could be skewing your numbers. These people are looking at this. We don't know exactly what their algorithms are, but they're different. That's why they're coming up with different things. But the main source to determine the value and what an appraiser would use, like an appraiser is not going to go to those websites to use those as resources. They're going to actually go to the resource that we have, which is the MLS. So you have to interpret it. You have to be able to explain to them that why it's great to be able to get information, but we understand it's confusing. And here's how we can unconfuse you. Now, all of a sudden, they're like, oh, I didn't know that. Now they're always going to come to you as a resource. So it's knowing the market stats so you understand what's going on, but it's also knowing the stats so you can communicate with consumers and build your brand, build your authority, build your top of mind awareness.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, you got to be able to have a conversation around this data. And you can't just keeping it to yourself means nothing. Like, you can have all the data, keep it to yourself, it means nothing. So you got to be able to have conversations about it. So practice the conversations and get out there and talk to people.
That's right.
Like, the more people you talk to about what's going on, the more business you're going to do.
Yeah. Know what's going on and then go start to tell everybody about it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, there we go. So how well do you know your market? Hopefully you'll take our guidance here and focus on, in increasing your knowledge of your market. I just recommend, choose like 4 or 5 different stats that's easy to find. And then every Sunday night, evening, or Monday early morning, go to your MLS, take 5 minutes to find out what those stats are. And then just start off every week knowing a few different stats. Now you have some talking points. Okay, bud. Thank you so much.
Enjoyed it.
All right,
Take care,
bye-bye.
guys.